Greetings to those of you watching me on social media, listening to us on the radio. I have a guest with me in my studio right now. Let me see if I can get these cameras to work. It is local conservative thought leader, liberty-minded activist, Mr. Tom Glass in the studio right now. Put that mic in front of your face there, Tom. Let the audience listen to you. What's going on with you, my brother?
Well, I'm trying to get ready for the Texas legislative session because we've got work to do to repair all the damage done from the last 4 years in Texas as well as in D.C., and I figure I can have a bigger impact in Texas than I can in D.C.
Tom, you and I have something in common. We have a lot in common, actually. Mm-hmm. Both of us are very, I would describe myself this way. I would think I would describe you this way, too. Very reluctant Republican. To me, I always dragged my feet about the fact that it's a two-party system. Loved Ron Paul. I think in the first, Erwin R. Scheif was one of the first political books I ever read, The Federal Mafia. Big fan of Harry Brown back in the day. And then right around the time when Trump started to become the face of the Republican Party, I noticed the faces of the libertarian movement became somewhat more collectivist, not so much individual rights. We're kind of getting into the weeds here about philosophy, but I think we could do that on this show. I am not a collectivist. I'm for the individual. I think the individual is the most important, underrated, underdefended minority in America. In a time when identity politics is so important to everybody in our media, it's the individual, the individual who doesn't have a religion or a race or an ethnicity or a gender or pronouns, is the person that often gets thrown to the wolves faster than you could snap your fingers. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the day, the Republican Party to me was the lesser of two evils. I abandoned the Libertarian Party right around the time Trump got elected, not because I thought he was a libertarian, but because I could see how he was anti-war, anti-drug war. For the first time in decades, we had a Republican leader that didn't care about gay marriage or any of that stuff, didn't care what your skin color was, wasn't concerned about invading the Mideast. And to me, I thought, well, pragmatism versus principles, Trump seemed like a better party to go to. He was sort of like a Christmas party at an office where you didn't think you were going to have any fun, but you showed up and they had eggnog and cookies and you actually kind of enjoyed yourself. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You left the Libertarian. You used to be one of the leaders of the Texas Libertarian Party. And now I don't see you having any association with those people at all. We did it around the same time period.
Right.
We didn't discuss it with each other, mm-hmm. but you did that, I got to think, for probably similar reasons.
I did it. The reason I went to the Libertarian Party to begin with was because I was tired of the crony control of the Republican Party. What has essentially been the theme of the Trump campaign this time around has all right.
You're good. I just want people to see you on the camera.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
What was the theme of the Trump campaign this time around was essentially MAGA versus the deep state. Right?
Yeah.
And or another way of saying it is the individual and freedom versus corporate control or corporatism.
Yeah.
And so and that's exactly what's going on here in Texas. We have a swamp in Austin too. And we have a group of people inside the leadership of the Republican Party in the grassroots that are committed to our Constitution and to what the founders were. And, in the Declaration, it said, what's the purpose of our government? It's to secure these rights, individual rights, unalienable rights. And that's been my mission all along. And, yeah, what I've discovered in the Libertarian Party is I had to fight people there, too, over the vision of what the party was going to be. And the people I was fighting, their vision was the collectivist vision.
Right.
And the anarchist vision, the type of stuff. And what I concluded is if I'm going to have to fight somewhere, I'll fight in somewhere that when you win, it's significant. And the Republican Party, the grassroots and the party leadership now is committed to a constitutional limited government, individual rights versus a corporatist state,
right.
Swamp deal. And that's why I'm back in the Republican Party.
I tend to agree on all those things. I could not have been a Republican when Mitt Romney and John McCain were the guys. When I was in my early 20s, I attended the University of Illinois, Chicago, where one of our professors was Bill Ayers, notable convicted terrorist, friend of Barack Obama. And I didn't know what I was, but as I walked around campus and met the anti-Israel activist and the anti-capitalist activist and the alphabet people, the LGBTQ mafia, I didn't know what I was. I just knew I wasn't that. Mm-hmm. But I also wasn't at the time a George W. Bush Republican.
Right.
I didn't care about gay marriage. I didn't care what brown people in Muslim countries were doing, and I didn't see why You know, as mad as I was about 9/11, it didn't make any sense to invade Iraq. As a man in his early 20s, that immediately didn't make any sense to me. Fast forward now, 20 years, the Republican Party suddenly makes a lot of sense to me. For years, we have heard people say, when is the libertarian moment coming? When is the libertarian moment coming? And libertarians would say, oh, it's Gary Johnson. It's this, it's that. We now have a president who's not a libertarian incoming. However, Ron Paul is in discussion to be part of the Department of Government Efficiency. Elon Musk, the libertarian who invented the space industry, basically privatized it. Vivek Ramaswamy, I think I'm a libertarian. I think I'm a Vivek Ramaswamy Republican. When I hear him talk, he's the only Republican besides Rand Paul.
Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. I mean,
it's a good lineup.
I mean, it's just the realignment that has happened in this campaign has just been one of the most joyous things that has happened in a long, long time in American politics.
I think this is the libertarian moment. The problem is this. The problem is this. John Cornyn. You've got guys like John Cornyn stepping in and saying, oh, Matt Gaetz is a problem. Well, why is he a problem? Well, this guy who's currently in jail for making accusations against someone else says Matt Gaetz is a predator and we did an investigation. Any proof of that? No, but kind of like Brett Kavanaugh, if you just say it enough, it becomes the truth. You know, Clarence Thomas, so many people that have been accused of this. I don't think Matt Gaetz did anything wrong. I think if he did, you know about it. But this isn't even about Matt Gaetz. This is about John Cornyn telling us at the beginning of last week, if we made him Senate Majority Leader, he would confirm all of Trump's nominations. He didn't become Senate Majority Leader, and now immediately Mr. Liberal Republican who helped Joe Biden pass gun control bills and got booed by his own party at the 2022 Texas Republican Party convention is now trying to stop Matt Gaetz, one of the great disruptors of our time, from becoming the head of the Department of Justice, an organization that recently investigated parents for getting mad at school board meetings and Catholics for attending traditional Latin Mass. Tom, that's the swamp. Matt Gaetz isn't the problem. John Cornyn's the problem.
Right. He's anti-MAGA. He's never Trump. And he was trying to tell us that he wouldn't be. And, of course, he is the very reason. His corporatist mentality, his established mentality that will serve the corporate interest and the big boys and the money against the Constitution and the individual is the very reason we had this conversation about where would we be comfortable.
Right.
But now that the party and Trump has transformed the Republican Party as well. I mean,
thank God.
And the deal is Cornyn is on the outs, just like Busby said in the Paxton impeachment trial. He said the era of George Bush is over. Well, the era of John Cornyn is over too.
I hope.
Yeah, and so the thing is, it is hard. It is hard to knock off somebody in a primary, but it is just hard because they have so much resources, so much name ID, and the people who vote in a Republican primary, I would say, who live their lives and just go about their living and don't listen to Kenny and other talk show hosts and get the details of what's going on in politics, a lot of times don't know why they're doing it. They believe the ads that come out with the fiddle in the the fiddle and he's a real Texan and all that sort of stuff. And certainly that worked in 2020, and it's going to be harder in 2026 to knock him off. But in my opinion, you apply pressure wherever you can, and that's I think the reason I'm here today is because on X I posted to you about the fact that Brian Harrison,
state lawmaker,
state rep, Brian Harrison, conservative, a great guy, MAGA guy, said he has already filed a bill that will try to make it where the Texas legislature can recall our U.S. senators from the U.S. Senate and then have a special election to replace them, or also an appointment from the governor.
Music to my ears. Now, this has happened in other states. Like people throw around words like, can we impeach a judge? Can we impeach a senator? Yeah, technically you can, but recalling makes more sense, right? A recall makes more sense.
Right.
Impeaching would imply we could prove they broke the law or did Cornyn just sucks. I don't know that he's doing anything illegal here. I mean, he probably is, but kind of like Menendez and, so many other people. Behind the scenes, probably something's going on. But at the end of the day, Cornyn needs to go just simply because he campaigned as a MAGA Republican, but he behaves like John McCain. I would assume if Cornyn wasn't a currently sitting senator for the state of Texas, he would have campaigned against Trump, just like his friend Mitt Romney or his
Nikki
John,
Haley.
John McCain or Liz Cheney or so many of these other people. Yeah, all the neocons. Nikki Haley, I don't even think is as problematic as Cornyn is. So nobody's ever been recalled in the state of Texas before. They did it in California recently. Newsom ended up winning the recall. Fine, whatever. But is that crazy to think that in California, I mean, obviously Gavin Newsom, he still won the recall, but the fact that they'd even consider it, can we do that in Texas with our horrible senator?
Well, in Texas, we do not have a recall law at any level, state or federal. And to my knowledge, there has never been a bill passed in a state that calls for a recall of their federal officers, especially U.S. Senate. And so when I first heard this idea from Brian, I mean, the first thing I said was this. I mean, what I'm all about is trying to figure out how the state of Texas can restore power to the people of Texas and to our government and take it away from the federal government. And I want to do it in every way, as creative ways as I can be. One of the ways I say it is this. When you have a relentless, very well-funded, very powerful group of people who are just spending their entire lives figuring out ways to take away your freedom,
right,
you have to be as relentless in your resistance and as creative in your resistance as you can be. And so I was very fascinated with Brian Harrison's bill because I thought, oh, that's cool. Well, as soon as I posted about this, and several people came in and linked to articles that said, oh, that wouldn't be permitted by the Supreme Court. And my deal is, well, it's certainly permitted by the Constitution because I understand the 10th Amendment, okay? And I understand, I've read the 17th Amendment, and I understand it. And the deal is, what the 17th Amendment said is change the way we pick our U.S. senators from having the legislatures of the state pick them to having the voters of a state pick them, okay? But the Constitution is silent on recall, okay? And so if it's silent on recall, some people have said, oh, well, if it's silent, that means you can't do it. Well, no, I've read the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment says if a state is not prohibited from doing something, or we haven't delegated the power to the federal government to doing something, then we in the state of Texas get to do what we want.
Yeah.
Okay, and so we do have the ability under the 10th Amendment and the 17th to be able to recall people. When we replace them, we're going to have to do it according to the 17th Amendment with an appointment by the governor and then a fairly quick special election. But having that tool on the table and just having the people of Texas discuss that and maybe even going through the Supreme Court, which who knows whether it will go. I know that if the Supreme Court rulings I've looked at or opinions I've looked at along the way leads you to believe that I think it's better than 50-50 shot that the Supreme Court would allow Texas to recall our U.S. senator legislatively. But the deal is that the reason why we do that is it puts pressure on Cornyn. There's three ways Cornyn can leave office. Okay, one is he can decide
to retire.
To retire.
Yeah.
Retire immediately, which is the best, for me, is the best case scenario.
Save us money and time. That'd be beautiful. Sure.
He can decide not to run again in 2026, creating an open seat. Or he can run again and then we defeat him in the primary in 2026. And my deal is the more pressure we put on him, the more likely it is that either he won't run again, or he may after having this happen to him, that he didn't get to be his lifelong goal, which is majority leader. Yeah. He could be just saying, okay, I'm out of here. I would love it to see it if he would just say, no, I'm not even going to do this anymore, and let the governor appoint somebody temporarily, and then let the people have a special election to replace him.
Let's put a pin in it right there. I'm talking to Tom Glass, a conservative thought leader, liberty activist from the state of Texas, one of the former heads of the Texas Libertarian Party. Actually, one of those people solely responsible for removing our last terrible House Speaker from office, Dennis Bonnen. We'll tell that story. Hang on, real quick. We'll be right back.
Some radio shows are so hot they'll literally burn your eyes. Fortunately, this isn't one of those shows.
I feel like never listening to y'all again.
Pursuit of Happiness Radio.
Hey, y'all, if you're watching us on social media right now, I'm Kenny Webster. You probably already know that because you follow me. And I'm here right now with Tom Glass. We're recording some segments that are going to be heard this afternoon. Christian Collins will be joining me in a short time. So stick around for that. We're going to talk about some of Trump's cabinet picks. But before we get to any of that, quick reminder, you could do your holiday shopping right now if you go to our website at ilovewj.com. If you guys are excited about all of the really cool Doge stuff happening right now, we have bomber jackets, hoodies, koozies, all kinds of things. You wouldn't believe it. Mouse pads, makes great stocking stuffers. If you are a fan of Doge, if you the Department of Government Efficiency, if you think it's funny, if you want to troll your liberal brother-in-law, you can get all that at our website, ilovewj.com. We are back. We're on the radio, but we're also streaming on social media. And we're playing royalty-free music. That means that when we're on social media, we can't play Nirvana and The Who. So instead, we play generic-sounding electronic music because we don't get into trouble with the social media gods, which has been a big problem lately. I had Facebook tell me twice over the weekend I did something wrong. And I thought, well, what did I do wrong? And then I clicked and it said, it's very offensive. You asked people who would win the fight, Tyson or Paul. And I thought, that's a weird reason for Facebook to tell me I violated a rule, but I don't think that was the problem. I think they're just censoring speech on social media. I think Facebook knows I'm a conservative, I'm a liberty activist, and I'm putting content out that probably is against the liberal narrative, and so I get flags. I got flagged for asking people who they'd voted for in the election. Really not very non-controversial stuff, nothing polarizing about that, but there's a reason that this happens. In fact, our attorney general here in the state, Ken Paxton, filed a lawsuit against Facebook for censoring conservatives on social media, probably a violation of Section 230 of the Electronics Decency Act. Ken Paxton, our attorney general in the state of Texas, files a lot of lawsuits that you would probably agree with if you're a conservative. And so I'm a big fan of Ken Paxton. I like that he sued Pfizer. I didn't like the vaccine mandates. I like when he goes after doctors for doing weird experimental gender-affirming treatments on teenagers and little kids. I like when he sues the Biden administration. And if you happen to agree with me on any of that stuff, if there's any one single thing that Ken Paxton has recently done as Attorney General of Texas that you enjoyed, just know that John Cornyn tried to stop Ken Paxton from doing those things. John Cornyn does not agree that Ken Paxton is doing a good job. John Cornyn does not agree with Ken Paxton's lawsuits against Pfizer or the Biden administration, just like he doesn't agree with Matt Gaetz being selected to be Attorney General of the United States of America for Donald Trump. And so my guest right now is this guy right here, Tom Glass, conservative thought leader, activist. Do you have a group that you represent, or are you just, what is the group?
My flagship group is Texas Constitutional Enforcement, and we have a Facebook group and a page, and we have a website, texasconstitutionalenforcement.com or txce.org for short. I also have another group called Texas Legislative Priorities on Facebook, where we focus on implementing the legislative priorities of the Republican Party of Texas at our Texas legislature. And so we're hot and heavy getting ready for the legislative session for both of those reasons.
I always try to remind people, there's a reason I book these guests on my show. If you don't know Tom, maybe you didn't know Michael Quinn Sullivan before he became a regular guest on this show. People like Tom and Michael are dragon slayers. What they do is they find bad politicians and they expose them and they end their careers. And years ago, that guy was Dennis Bonnen, our former House Speaker. And you stood outside of one of his fundraisers one time, and I guess, what did it cost? $15,000 for a plate of food.
It was a lot of money.
That's a lot of money for meatloaf, I think. But people don't pay that absurd amount of money to eat dinner with a politician because they want to have veal. Why are they paying all that money to eat dinner with a politician, Tom?
Well, they call it, I think the economists call it rent seeking. I think another name for it, a better name for it, is subsidy sucking. It's trying to get a favor from a government to benefit yourself at the expense of the taxpayer or your competitor.
Right.
And that's the way the game is played for the speaker race in Texas. Now, it's the way the game is played for lots of things, but the speaker especially is kind of the king of the cronies. He's the bag man for the cronies, who takes all their money and then doles it out to try to keep power so that the cronies can get what they want out of the Texas legislature. We've got speaker is very important, and we're having a knockdown dragout, which is essentially replaying what happened in the Trump campaign this time, which is, MAGA versus the deep state. Well, we've got grassroots versus the Austin swamp going on with the speaker race right now in Austin.
Okay, so that's a pretty big deal. And you guys have been very effective in the past of removing corrupt politicians from state politics, which is something that never happens. It's very hard to get local people interested in state legislature.
Yes, it is.
To those people that are already interested in it or understand it, usually they have a horse in the race, so they're willing to look the other way when this guy's a little corrupt if it'll help their guy. Grassroots activists get a lot of attention on social media when it comes to national politics, but when it comes to state or local, it's almost impossible. Now, when you guys were getting rid of Dennis Bonnen, our last terrible House Speaker in Texas before the current terrible one,
Right.
I asked you a question on this radio show.
Okay.
I asked you, who should we replace him with? And you gave me a very good, honest, and somewhat disappointing answer. You said, Kenny, I don't know who it should be. I just know who it shouldn't be. And I kind of feel the same way about Senator John Cornyn. I don't know who we should replace him with. There's a handful of guys I like, Wesley Hunt, Mays Middleton, people I trust from state politics, Chip Roy, for example. I just don't like John Cornyn. Any of them would be better than him. But what's the first thing we do to get rid of this guy?
For me, personally, I'm the guy that stays focused on the Texas legislature and figures out ways in the Texas legislature and in Texas to push back on bad federal stuff. And so for me, what I'm going to work on is with Brian Harrison on trying to move this bill forward that allows us to recall U.S. senators to put pressure on him that way. The way we removed Dennis Bonnen was we put pressure after pressure after pressure on him until he decided that he was not going to run again. And I'm hoping if we do enough of the pressure on John Cornyn now, he either will resign immediately, just saying it's not worth it anymore. I didn't get to be majority leader, which is the reason I was hanging around here. I'm going to go retire and be with my grandkids, or we persuade him not to run again. And I think part of that pressure can be applied from the Texas legislature by trying to get this recall in.
I want to show people something that really bothers me about John Cornyn, and I'm doing this in real time right now. So forgive me for not having this on the screen already, but we often joke that some of these politicians are not authentic Texans. Like, we'll make the joke that Dan Crenshaw is such a, authentic Texan that his favorite country music singer is Keith Urban or something like that, and then everyone will laugh. What I'm about to show you guys on my screen is a real photo. John Cornyn, who claims to be born in Texas, who claims to be a rootin' tootin' red dirt Texas guy, thinks that this is what brisket looks like, Tom. And I understand of all the reasons not to like John Cornyn, this should be the least of our concerns. He's in bed with the military-industrial complex and big pharma, and anyone in government that's corrupt and evil and awful is probably his political ally. I often make the point that he is every Democrat's favorite Republican. But if all of that's lost on you, then certainly shouldn't this convince you we need to get rid of him? What the hell are we looking at here? Is this ketchup with meatloaf? He claims that this is brisket, Tom. You grew up in Texas. What is that?
Well, I don't know, but I will tell you this. The other thing he does is he has a fiddle Texas fiddle playing in the background on his ads to prove that he's a real Texan.
Sure, that's it.
Yes. My wife and I joke that, if we go into Buc-ee's, when we can't go into Buc-ee's very often, because if we see something that has a beveled Texas star on it, we're going to buy it. I mean, and so if he plays a fiddle in the behind the scenes on his ads, you've got to vote for him.
You get tricked into believing it.
That's right.
I'm with you. Tom Glass. Hey, I want everybody to do me a favor. Tom Glass is on X. Is that the best place to follow you? I got to assume.
Tom G. Glass on X. And on Facebook, we have Texas Constitutional Enforcement and Texas Legislative Priorities.
I love that. And that's all. I'll post links to that right now on my X account. And I just want to say, although this concludes our conversation about this for today, this isn't the end of talking about getting rid of Cornyn. Moving forward, I got to think this isn't the last time he's going to be a thorn in the ass of conservatives, populists, libertarians, the MAGA movement. So stay tuned for that. Follow my buddy Tom Glass on X in the meantime. Hey, to the rest of you, I love you all. Have an awesome afternoon. We'll be back bright and early tomorrow morning for more of what you bought a radio for.
You are listening to the Pursuit of Happiness Radio. Tell the government to kiss your ass when you listen to this show.